and welcome to Light for Life. If you are returning to our channel, thank you. We value and appreciate you. Our aim is to shine a bright light on your inner splendor and assist to connect you to your magnificence via what we intend to be enlightened sharing, potentially educational and hopefully entertaining information, as well as encouragement for new perspectives. If you are new here, you are most welcome. We do hope that you will find our content highly beneficial and enjoyable. I am Liz. I'm a science of mind practitioner and a teacher of various healing modalities applicable to all aspects of the self and this life.
And I am Lori. I am a holistic wellness researcher and educator. Welcome to Connections with Liss and Lori. We use the space to offer our perspective regarding multiple different topics that we certainly hope you find inspiring. Today, Liss and I are going to be sharing our perspectives regarding shadow and light and the possible contrast or conflict between the two is where the magic really happens, in my opinion. And I think it's important to first start talking about what is shadow. We've talked in previous episodes regarding energy and light. So if you haven't watched those, it might be a good place for you to start to better understand those. And then we can segue into what is shadow. I think a lot of people might have, I don't want to say misperceptions, but a misunderstanding regarding what shadow really could be. And it really is simply the parts of ourselves that we might keep in the closet, that we might keep hidden from ourselves. It's where we put our fears in a box on a shelf in the corner of the closet, our insecurities, perhaps some of our traumas, our false beliefs about ourselves that we might not even understand are hiding in the nooks and crannies, our unresolved issues, not only with ourselves, but with others. So it's, in my perception, shadow really is kind of that big box of junk we don't really like to visit very frequently, if ever. But what's important to understand about shadow is that it's actually imperative, if that's a good word, to take a peek at those things that we would rather avoid, because we actually spend a lot of energy avoiding. These things want to be brought into the light and understood and healed, so we can incorporate those things out of our life or perhaps into our life, so we can start to bridge the gap between what we hide from ourselves and what is true about ourselves. And it's that gap that, like I said, is really where the magic happens. When we pull back the energy that we have spent from avoiding those nooks and crannies and the dark spaces, and when we shine a flashlight in those dark spaces to begin to understand those aspects of ourselves that we're just not comfortable with, we can really replenish our energy. Just that in itself is a way that we can replenish our energy, because we're not spending so much energy avoiding or denying or hiding from that part of ourselves, but really examining it and bringing our self back into balance. It can be a really beautiful dance between the light and the dark parts of ourselves. And it's not necessarily traumatizing to actually do this, to actually peek into those corners. It's actually really enlightening to find out those pieces of ourselves that we've been hiding from. And it's a really courageous act to get to know ourselves and really harmonize the different aspects of ourself in our greater understanding and in our soul's journey. What say you, my friend?
Lori, I've got two big things to say that are like categories all by themselves. So before I directly speak to some of what you've shared, which in my view relates directly to the personal shadow, the shadow self, I just like to create a perceptual framework around shadow itself before we apply it personally. So within this paradigm of light, we knew, incarnating through the paradigm of light, that we were coming into one of the properties of light known as illumination, and that illumination in 3D reality would have its perceptual opposite of a shadow. Because in a realm of contrast, we cannot have visible light without shadow, because visible light is what? Casts shadow. Right. So we knew that we were choosing a paradigm of polarity and duality and contrast. And that's what we came down here to experience. But what has happened is that we've lost our grip on what's real. We've lost our conceptual understanding of what light itself is beyond illumination and shadow. And so we have come to personalize the fact that visible light is all that light is. And so therefore the light is good. And so being the opposite, shadow must be bad, evil, dark, scary. And both of those concepts are equally incorrect. The fact is that light as a totality, and as you asked our viewers, please go watch our episode about light to understand more about what I'm saying here. Light in its totality has many, many properties. It is energy, it is information, and yes, illumination, wisdom, intuition. But it is also the essence of life. And the key word there is in essence. Everything that is real in truth. Everything that is true in higher dimensions above this material plane are only true because they hold an essence. Shadow, therefore, is not real because it has no essence. Shadow is the absence of essence. So when we decide that any form of shadow is real and true, we become afraid of it as being evil, dark, and bad. Because we've given it a reality and we've given it a life force, we've given it an essence that it does not possess. So that is the first thing that you need to realize. A personal shadow, shadows out in the world providing us contrast, are no more real than your shadow cast on the ground by the sun overhead. It is a 2D contrast mechanism. It's constantly shifting. It has no life. It has no form. It has no reality. And it certainly has no eternity. So the only thing we can do to shadows is dissipate them using the light through its property of illumination. And we possess that personally as our faculty of awareness. So what we have to do first and foremost is become aware that shadows are not real. And the best way I could possibly summarize that is the very well-known adage that's been around for thousands of years. If it's negative, it didn't happen. That is the highest truth. So that's the first thing we must do, is bring the light of our awareness to what the reality of shadows actually is, and then shine that light of awareness into that perceived shadow to see what falsehoods, fakeness, and absence that shadow is based on. Because what we do when we are little children is we cannot consciously understand something negative that is happening to us because we're innocent. And we are not conscious as beings yet until the age of 7. So what the conscious mind does is it literally builds a little treasure box of horrors that it can't comprehend, and saves all of those events, hurts, fears, and confusions in this little treasure box until we turn about 7. And then when we're 7, and when we start becoming conscious, start becoming our own little people, waking up out of theta, we realize that here's this box. And I want to have some fun. I don't want to use the light of my consciousness for the very first thing to do, open up this box full of fears, confusions, and terrors. So we take our little box and we bind it in chains. And we put a big, strong padlock on it. And then we go on a little adventure with our little box, and we take it into the deepest, darkest forest or the tallest, highest mountain that our little legs can carry us to. We dig a hole in the ground, and we put our little treasure box in there, and we fill it up, and then we create a magical, fantastic dragon to guard it for us. It's fire breathing and it's terrifying. So no one's ever going to find our little treasure box, including ourselves. And we skip along and have our quote-unquote happy childhood, ignoring all these terrible things that we don't want to face.
Absolutely. I can so relate to a child not wanting to look at what's underneath the bed, putting those things in a box and having them completely protected and avoiding and ignoring. I feel like you sort of described a lot of my childhood that was a little too much for me to handle. And there were some traumas along the way that as a young kid, I certainly didn't have tools to cope with. And I imagine a lot of people can really relate to that. And with one of the experiences that I actually had, in a way, I feel like part of me just left the building, kind of split off from myself. It was simply too much for my young brain to handle. And I certainly put that in a box on a shelf in the closet, way, way, way in the back. And I really had no intention of ever digging that out again. But at a certain point again, this is just me sharing my perspective, right? That's what we're here to do, is sharing our perspectives. I was so profoundly overwhelmed with that experience that it really had an effect on my health and my emotions and my thoughts. And I had a lot of energy going in a direction I didn't have any idea about, had no awareness over trying to shift it. And there became a really huge gap in my life between what I was holding in the closet and where I really wanted to be. I did want to be rainbows and unicorns and glitter. But I had this massive ball and chain following me everywhere. So there was a massive gap between this shadow and this light self. And I had no idea how to bridge that. So at some point for me, and I think it's true for a lot of people, we just get so uncomfortable with our life that discomfort propels us forward to bring about change and start seeking ways that we can change how we feel. I know I don't want to feel this anymore. What do I do? How do I start changing? And bridging the gap between those really dichotomous positions that we can feel within ourselves and within our bodies. And I can go on and on for days what I did and stumbled over myself, but bridging that gap to feel whole again and to feel not so split again, not just with my thoughts and with my emotions, but there were times when I literally felt split in my body. My right half and my left half almost didn't want to coordinate with each other. There was a very obvious split, and I certainly wasn't feeling whole. So I think maybe the next segue would be into how can people start to reintegrate tapping into those shadows and shining a light into the shadow so we can feel that wholeness again.
Perfect example and wonderful questions, Lori. And firstly, it's so not a unique story.
No.
Every one of us have our own version of that. No doubt about it. And so, yes, what is the bridge between light and dark, and how do we bring them together? What is that gray area?
Mm-hmm.
And initially, when we're in that gray area where we're trying to merge these two polar opposites, it can feel foggy.
Mm-hmm.
It can be very unclear and very confusing.
Yeah.
But what we need to profoundly realize is that, yes, that little child grows up. We all become adults. And sooner or later, life will force us to acknowledge, you know what? There's that box, remember? And we can only consciously choose to ignore it so many times, so often, for so long, before something will force us to face that box. And it will be terrifying. It will be absolutely terrifying. No part of our being is going to want us to do this. But here's the amazing part. If we can just find those famous 3 insane seconds of courage and actually decide to take that trek back to where we know we buried that box. As frightened as we are, what we realize as adults is that we now do, in fact, have the wherewithal, the consciousness, the awareness, the knowledge, the emotional capacity and maturity, the self-control, the centeredness that we didn't have as a little child. So, scary dragon is not so scary at all. Turns out, scary dragon is my friend.
Mm-hmm.
Scary dragon has been looking after my treasure box for me. Not going to attack me. I don't have to be afraid to approach. And when scary dragon backs off of where I know I buried my box, and I'm expecting that I'm going to have to dig and dig and dig and uncover all this dirt to get to my box, we find out, you know what? It's actually only under about a centimeter worth of soil because we were 7 when we buried it. So finding the box is actually really, really easy. And then, you know, it was actually just a really, really small, cheap little lucky packet version of a lock. And we get the chain off real easy. And I was sitting there on our haunches in our pile of dirt with our little closed box. And we're thinking, you know what, maybe this actually won't be so bad. Because so far, this whole process hasn't been nearly as scary as I thought it would be. So we take a deep breath and we open the box, and guess what we find? Smoke. And underneath it, Lori, the gold, the diamond, our true self, our power. That's what's been in that treasure box all along. And all of these illusions that we were so scared of, we find ourselves. So that is the reintegration that you were just talking about. That is the journey back to wholeness, is to come to those scary things with all the tools and the knowledge and the strength that we have now, and realize that we can allow those frightened, confused, lost and lonely aspects of ourselves to grow up as ourselves now and be there for ourselves. And that is the beautiful dance of the light and the shadow. It's a cha-cha. You take 1 step forward, you take 2 steps back, you take another 1 step forward. But it gets to be more and more fun as you learn to dance wonderfully. And eventually it's just you in your magnificent spotlight. And you're the star of the show. You get center stage, baby. Shine.
Shine bright like a diamond.
Yes. Yes. Because you know what? You have a diamond light that only you possess. No one else can shine it like you can. So if you're not shining it, the world is missing it.
Mm-hmm.
And if the world didn't need it, you wouldn't be here. So the fact that you're here says that your light is unique and it's valuable. Don't ever put it down. Don't ever hide it away. Don't ever make it less than what it is. Because it's radiant, it's beautiful, it's unique, and it's so needed.
Absolutely. Every one of us is so needed, and we can't shine when there's dust and dirt and mud covering up those diamonds. So I couldn't agree more. Polish up those diamonds and shine them bright, so we can, you know, it's similar to what we're doing now, so other people can pave the way for the other people, for the other people, for the other people, and we can all start shining in our brilliant glory.
Yeah, a rough diamond, you might throw away if you didn't know any better, because, I mean, there ain't nothing special about it until you take it to those precision cutting jewelers who have the tools to see, but okay, it has this facet and it has that flaw, which is part of its beauty. And so if you cut it just right, that's how it's going to reflect the light. And isn't that what we're here to do for each other, to be energetic precision jewelers? And that's what I see us doing here, is actually getting that perfect cut. And then the light's going to hit just right. Just right.
I love that. I love a good analogy.
I know, I'm full of them.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Shine bright. Love it. Thank you for connecting with Light for Life. If you appreciate reminders, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you can receive those notifications. If you would like to work with one of us, you can find our contact information in the About section of this channel.
Yes, thank you for connecting with Light for Life. Please share your insights, your questions, and your comments with us in the comment section below. We value your feedback. And we really hope that we will see you for our next episode. We upload one every Thursday. Until then, bye-bye and be joyful.
Until we connect again, we send you love and light.